My name is Genoa Barrow, and I am a writer, a journalist, a mother. I'm a black woman in America. I wear many hats. I've been with the Sacramento Observer for 23 years. I say I write, therefore I am. I've been an avid reader my entire life. Library, I grew up, like, the library was just, took me to different worlds, I always say library card is like the best card in town. And I grew up in Oakland, and there was a great library, and we would just spend hours and hours just in the library reading, different books. And so that's sort of, I think they go hand in hand. Reading, writing, I don't know about the arithmetic part, but those two go hand in hand, and read since, I was a child, and sort of I used to read things, I read books, and if I didn't like the ending, I used to write my own. And so that's how I first started writing. And so those early little books, endings, my own endings. And see, the funny thing is, like, I'm really big on, like, backstory. I love epics. So, like, the Lord of the Rings, even the Game of Thrones, like, all these, like, epic, like, and so right now I'm like a geek, because they have a new the Rings of Power, which is like the backstory to the Lord of the Rings, right? And so you get to all this history from, if you watch or have read, because I'm really big on, like, TV shows and movies that started as books, right? So, and then seeing, like, the differences and all that. So if you're up on the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power, this new series, and so I was watching it, and because you get all the history, so I'm like geeking out, and my daughter's like, "You're such a nerd," and I was like, "Yes, I claim that." So, I have a long history with like books, and just like, I never got into the Harry Potter, but stuff like that, like I just love it. Writing, it's a skill, right? Being a journalist and writing is a skill, right? And so I've cultivated that, over the years. But obviously, I majored in journalism, got a degree in journalism, but and I had a minor in sociology. So, like, understanding, people, what drives people, and sort of it plays into, the storytelling, and, also being, I also say, I'm also a child of the world, right? And so all these different elements, and understanding people, and sometimes I get, like, I don't know, I compare it to what's the video game Pole Position. And so you're driving, you get in that, like, you get in that zone, you hear people, and it's like it comes together, like, and there's a magic to it, and just that in general, I love telling people stories, right? Especially people who, their stories haven't been told. And people say, what keeps you at it, this long? Because, like I said, I've been at the Observer for 23 years. In journalism, longer than that in general. But, like, there's so many stories yet to tell, right? And just the nuances you can hear, like, people, like, you're just like, people need to know these things. And so, like I said, it's a skill, bringing it all together, because I could talk to somebody for an hour, 2 hours. Obviously, in the space of, newspapers, you're not going to, use all of that. But it helps, it's the backstory, the background, and just, I hope that I'm presenting people in a way that their stories are told and celebrated. Well, okay, let me tell you how the book, my new book of poetry, my first book of poetry, and I've written poetry, throughout times, but I've gotten away from it, especially when the work, my 9 to 5, it takes a lot of time, so I rarely have time to do creative writing. In that sense. So the new book is 7 by 7, Kudos and Kwansabas, something for my sisters. And I'll explain where that came from. Kwansabas is a poetry form that was created by educator Dr. Eugene Redman. He is the poet laureate of East St. Louis, but he's worked here, Sac State, different times. And he created this back in the 90s. And the word Kwansabas is a combination between the word Kwanzaa and Kwanzaa, which is guided by 7 principles, which are also referred to as the Nguzo Saba. So Kwansabas is Kwanzaa, Nguzo Saba put together. So it's a challenge. It's 7 lines, 7 words each line, and each word can be no longer than 7 letters. And so that's the challenge in itself. But, Eugene Redman came across my mind. And 2022, coming out of 2021 pandemic, isolation, all that stuff, I was just like, this is going to be my year. And I'm going to, stop procrastinating on things. I'm going to, own all of this, I'm going to make this year mine. And how do I do that? I want to leave a legacy. I mean, I see my name, obviously, in the paper byline every week, right? But, I really, having been a child that grew up basically in a library, I want to see my book, I want to see my name on a book. That's always been my dream. And so several books have come, and I'm juggling. But the book of poetry, it really, when Eugene Redman came across my mind, I said, the Kwansabas, let me, and, we were talking about just, some conversations I was having with some friends and colleagues about, Black women are really doing it right now, right? Leaders in almost like everything, right? And so how do you celebrate that? And so the Kwansabas is supposed to be celebratory, right? You're celebrating somebody or something. And so it's something for my sisters came up. And so the new book...
is that where some of the imagery came from?
Yeah, because... I was going to do some, and this is a limited edition because I was trying to get it out. But I talk about procrastination. I wanted to get it out. But so there's some artwork because I've been dabbling in this art form called Corporate Memphis. So there's a couple of children's books I have coming out too, and I'm doing my own illustrations, even though I'm not classical artist, but I have some vision for it. So. Yeah, I just like something from my sisters, like obviously the 7x7, and then just some images of Black women, so I thought that was kind of representative of that. But yeah, something for my sisters, just the subtitle, because I'm sharing. It's sort of like when people say I'm giving them their flowers now. So I have local, it's 49, again with the 7x7, 49. So I challenged myself to write 49 poems in a month. And I wrote, it was a month and a day. So I was really proud of myself that I was able to do that on top of, all the other writing projects, my 9 to 5, that I was able to do that. And so I have poems about, women that are doing things on a national level, and then like women locally in the Sacramento region, Bay Area, women that I admire, women that are on my wish list of like interviewed women I have interviewed. One of the special ones, there's 2. I wrote one, Ruby Dee, late actress, activist, and I also wrote one about Betty Shabazz, who was the wife and widow of Malcolm X. And I interviewed Ruby Dee once. It was right after she lost her husband, her soulmate, Ossie Davis, and she was looking at me. And each one of the, I tell the story about, who that person is, who the woman is. And as I was interviewing Ruby Dee, she started looking at me kind of funny. And I was like, okay, I know, she just lost her husband, And so she said, you look like my friend Betty. And I was like, okay. And she's like, Betty Shabazz. you look like Betty Shabazz. And so I was just stunned, that she would say that. And so that always stuck with me. So there's poems in here about Ruby Dee and about Betty Shabazz. So I share that story in that. Some local women, just like women that are like, having an impact on, our world. And they should be celebrated. And so they're celebrated in my book. As a child, obviously reading books and things and poetry, there are periods where Black poetry, just, has uplifted me. Maya Angelou, who I also have a poem about in the book. Paul Laurence Dunbar, and playwrights like Langston Hughes, like all of that, like formulated, I think, who I am. Nikki Giovanni, poems about, being who I am, right? And so in writing poetry, I write, I'm able to write poetry at different times, right? So it's like if I have time, right? But I hope people walk away from the book with knowing that there are women who look like them, women who have been through things, right? And they're leaving their marks on the world. And so books, not just 7 by 7, but, my writing in general, I hope, to leave a mark and celebrating some voices that don't get celebrated. Obviously, some of these women, people know Ruby Dee, people know Maya Angelou, right? But the thing is, some people don't, even though they've done marvelous things and have, contributed a lot to, our world. Younger people, I talk to young people, all the time, and they're like, you say, oh, this person, and they have no clue who that is. And I think that's, their legacy deserves to live on. And so I hope just capturing in short some of their efforts will do that. And you can pick up, I hope you can pick it up, be inspired, to do. I have a poem in here about Faith Fancher, who was a broadcast journalist in the Bay Area, and I'm from the Bay Area. And I know watching the news, there were two anchors. They worked for Channel 2 KTVU. There was Faith Fancher and there was Dennis Richmond. And you turned on the news and it was like two Black actors. I mean, that was a big deal, right? And so that inspired me long before I ever wanted to be a journalist. I saw, and then go back to, I grew up in Oakland, reading the Tribune, and the person who ran the paper at the time was Bob Maynard, Black man. Those were things of pride. So I'm hoping my poems are things of pride. And you can walk away from, men or women, to be inspired to leave your own mark in the world.
And so, last but not least, I know you have a book signing tomorrow. What's coming forward? What should we look for? What's next? Okay.
Well, I hope to eke out time to promote the book and market the book the way I want. Set up some book signings, discussions, in other parts of California, and going beyond. Someone suggested that I do a online thing, so I'm formulating that already. And as mentioned at the end of the book, working on Volume 2, 7 by 7, and it's going to be Kudos and Kwansabas is about Black sports figures. And so I've already started. Got Serena, of course, the GOAT. She's in there. Like I said, I'm from Oakland, so I have a poem about Ricky Henderson. It's going to be called The Man of Steel because he used to steal bases. And so that's coming out. I have a couple of children's books coming out. So like I said, like people ask me, why are you doing all this stuff? And it's like, tomorrow's not promised, right? And so I really, really, really had this burst of creativity, and I'm trying to take advantage of it and just put it out there in the world and see what people think of it.
And so, where can people find out more? Contact you, buy the book?
Okay, I do have a website. It's called gbunlimitedpress.com. So you can find out about what I have going on. on there. I am on Twitter, GB Unlimited, but the book is available on Amazon.com right now, and so obviously when I have my events, they'll also be available. But yeah, if you want to find out about my writings and sort of how I came to be, who I am. Check me out on, I'm old school, so social media is still new to me, but you can catch me there too. And I'm still working as, journalist, so I'm out in the community and, yeah.
All right.